Picture a general receiving news that changes everything. He's 250 miles away from the problem. He's on an island off the coast of Wales, in the middle of a campaign he has spent months planning and executing. His legions are with him. His cavalry is with him. Everything he needs to finish the job he came here to do is right in front of him. And then a rider arrives. The man pulled his horse to a stop so hard the animal nearly fell. He was covered in road dust and something darker, the kind of exhaustion that only comes from riding through the night with bad news. "Governor," the rider said, and something in his voice made every officer in earshot go still. "Camulodunum is gone." Suetonius looked at him. "Gone. Destroyed, sir." "The 9th Legion marched to relieve it." The rider paused. "The 9th Legion no longer exists." The silence that followed lasted exactly as long as it took Suetonius to understand what he was being told. Then he turned to his officers with an expression none of them had ever seen on his face before. "We ride. Now." His name is Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, Roman governor of Britain. One of the most experienced military commanders in the empire. A man who had fought in Africa, crossed the Atlas Mountains, and never once shown his soldiers what fear looked like. They saw something close to it that morning. To understand the full weight of what Suetonius was facing, you need to understand where he was and what he was doing when all of this started. Anglesey, a small island off the northwest coast of Wales that had become, in Rome's eyes, one of the most dangerous places in Britain. Not because of its military fortifications, it had none, but because of what it represented. Anglesey was the last stronghold of the Druids, the religious and intellectual heart of Celtic Britain. The priests, the scholars, the keepers of oral tradition, the people who gave the resistance its spiritual backbone. As long as Anglesey stood, Rome had not truly conquered the soul of the island. Tacitus describes the Roman crossing to Anglesey in terms that suggest even battle-hardened soldiers found it disturbing. The Druids stood on the shore, arms raised, screaming curses. Women in black ran between them with torches. The scene was so unsettling that the Roman soldiers, trained, disciplined veterans of multiple campaigns, hesitated at the water's edge. "They're priests," said one centurion to the man beside him, voice low. "Not soldiers." "Then why are your hands shaking?" replied the other. "They crossed anyway. Because Suetonius ordered them to. And they destroyed what they found. The sacred groves, the altars, everything Rome had come here to erase, with the systematic efficiency that the Roman military applied to every problem it encountered." And then the rider arrived. Suetonius left Anglesey immediately. He rode ahead of his legions, cavalry escort only 250 miles through territory that was no longer safe, because he understood that every hour mattered. That the province he had been sent to govern was coming apart behind him while he had been fighting on an island at its edge. He was riding toward the hardest decision of his career. Londinium in 60 AD was not yet the capital of Roman Britain, but it was already the most important city in the province. Built on the Thames at the lowest bridging point of the river, it was a commercial hub. Traders from across the empire, merchants, craftsmen, bankers. A thriving, chaotic, genuinely cosmopolitan city that had grown up in less than 20 years from nothing. It had no walls. Let that sit for a moment. The most commercially valuable city in Roman Britain had no defensive walls. It had grown too fast, too organically, in the confident assumption that Roman military power would always be the only protection it needed. That assumption was now marching toward it with 100,000 warriors. Suetonius arrived in Londinium ahead of his legions. He assessed the situation with the cold calculation of a man who has spent his career making impossible choices. The city's population surrounded him the moment he rode in. Merchants, families, elderly residents who had nowhere to go. "You have to defend us," an older Roman merchant stepped forward, his voice cracking. "We built this city. We have businesses here, families." "I know what you have here," Suetonius said quietly. "Then you know you cannot leave us." Suetonius looked at the man. At the crowd behind him. At the city with no walls and no garrison strong enough to hold against what was coming. "I know exactly what I'm doing," he said. "And I know what it costs." He had fewer than 10,000 troops immediately available. Boudica had more than 100,000. The 9th Legion was destroyed. And the 2nd Legion, stationed at Exeter under a camp commander named Poenius Postumus, had received Suetonius's direct orders to march north and join him. Postumus had refused. One man's cowardice in one moment of weakness, compounding an already catastrophic situation. Suetonius made his decision. He would not fight at Londinium. He would save his army for a battle on ground of his own choosing. He would sacrifice the city to save the province. He gave the order to march, and told the crowd that anyone who could keep pace with the column was welcome to try. The elderly couldn't keep pace. The sick couldn't keep pace. The mothers with young children. The traders who had spent 20 years building something here and couldn't abandon it in an afternoon. They watched the Roman army walk away from them. And behind the retreating column, at the edge of the horizon, the first dust cloud of Boudica's army appeared. Boudica's army arrived. She rode at the front. Chariot, red hair, bronze torque, the marks that Rome had left on her still a living memory in the body of every person who had chosen to follow her here. Around her, 100,000 people who had decided, collectively, that the accounting was due. What followed is documented by Roman historians with a combination of military precision and barely contained horror. Londinium burned. Not partially. Not in sections that could be rebuilt around. Completely. The fire was so intense that clay roof tiles warped under the heat. Grain stores burned so hot they left a layer of scorched earth visible to archaeologists 2,000 years later. Glass melted. Bronze military equipment fused into shapes that no longer resembled the objects they had been. That layer is still there. Under the financial district of modern London. Under the office towers and the coffee shops and the millions of people who walk over it every day without knowing it exists. Archaeologists call it the Boudican destruction horizon. A band of red and black debris, sometimes 30 centimeters thick, running under the city like a scar that never fully healed. Charred timber. Burnt grain. Melted glass. Household objects that belong to people who ran out of time. In some places there are human remains. 70,000 people, Romans, provincial Britons, traders from across the empire, died across Camulodunum, Londinium and Verulamium combined. That number comes from Tacitus, who was not given to exaggeration. Even adjusted for ancient historical tendencies toward round numbers, the scale is not in dispute. The archaeological record confirms it. Not with words. With layers of ash under 3 modern English cities, all dating to the same year. If you're watching this and thinking, I had no idea any of this was sitting under London right now, you're not alone. Most people don't. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, because what comes after this is where the story turns. Boudica has destroyed 3 cities. She has never lost a battle. And she is about to make the one mistake that Suetonius has been waiting for. From the ruins of Londinium, Boudica's army moved northwest. Verulamium. Modern St. Albans. A town with a significant population of Romanized Britons. People who had chosen to adopt Roman ways, Roman dress, Roman architecture. Which means that Boudica was not only striking at Roman settlers. She was striking at Britons who had decided that cooperation with the empire was preferable to resistance. That distinction matters. It tells us something about the nature of this war that gets complicated when you look at it closely. This was not simply Britons against Romans. It was also, in some ways, a conflict about identity, a struggle over what it meant to be British in a world that Rome had fundamentally and permanently altered. Verulamium fell. Burnt. The same destruction layer appears in the archaeological record. The same signature of total, organized fire. A trinovant warrior riding beside Boudica's chariot looked at the smoke rising behind them. 3 cities worth of smoke now, 3 columns merging into a single dark stain across the British sky. 3 cities, he said. They'll sing about this for 1,000 years. They'll sing about it, replied Boudica, eyes forward, when it's finished. And at this moment, with 3 cities reduced to ash, the 9th Legion destroyed, the procurator fled, the province in chaos, she stood at the absolute peak of her power. Nero, in Rome, reportedly considered evacuating the entire province. The Emperor of Rome, master of the largest empire in the Western world, looked at what one woman had built from a standing start in a matter of weeks and asked whether Britain was even worth the cost of keeping. He decided it was. He was going to rely on the fact that Suetonius was still in the field. Here is the thing about reaching the top of a mountain. You can see everything from there. Every victory. Every city taken. Every legion broken. Every Roman official who ran. From the top it looks like the war is won. What you can't see is what's waiting in the valley on the other side. Suetonius had spent weeks watching Boudica win. He had watched her burn Londinium from a distance, moving his army steadily northwest, refusing every instinct that told him to turn and fight. His officers pushed him daily. "We have to engage her," said his senior tribune, voice tight with frustration. "Every day we retreat, she grows stronger." "Every day we retreat," replied Suetonius without looking up from the map in front of him, "I get closer to the ground I want. And if morale breaks before we get there?" Suetonius looked up then. "Then make sure it doesn't." He was looking for one specific thing, a narrow valley with forests behind it and open ground in front. Terrain that would limit Boudica's front to a width his 10,000 soldiers could actually hold, because 100,000 warriors on open ground are unstoppable. In a narrow valley where they can only attack on a front limited by geography, 100,000 warriors become something else entirely. They become a crowd. And crowds, no matter how righteous and furious and justified, do not fight as efficiently as 10,000 trained soldiers in tight formation on ground specifically engineered to favor those 10,000 soldiers. He found his valley somewhere in the Midlands. The exact location is still debated by historians and is one of the great unsolved questions of Roman Britain. He positioned his legions at the narrow end, forests at their back preventing encirclement, open ground in front where Boudica's army would have to come to him. Then he waited. 3 cities gone. 70,000 dead. The 9th Legion destroyed. The procurator fled. The emperor considering abandoning the island entirely. By every measure that existed, Boudica had won. Except for one general in a valley with 10,000 soldiers and a plan that required only one thing: that Boudica's army, flushed with victory and hungry for the final confrontation, would come to him. On his ground. On his terms. She came. Next episode, The Last Battle. The moment where 100,000 people discovered that momentum and justice and righteous fury are not, by themselves, enough. And what happened to Boudica when it was over?